Let's talk about the cycle of fifths because it's a really useful concept in jazz and I think people tend to overcomplicate it. Specifically in this video, I want to talk about the diatonic cycle of fifths. Let's take a look at a major scale in the key of B flat. You've got first a whole tone, and then a whole tone, half tone, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, half tone. Simple B flat major scale. It's called the diatonic scale. It's basically what all Western harmony is built on. So there are basically 7 notes to that scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you cycle through that scale in fifths by going down a fifth each time, that's what we call the cycle of fifths. Start with the root, go down a fifth, we get to E flat, go down a fifth, we get to A, not A flat because A flat's not part of the key. Then we get to D, G, C, F, and then back to B flat. That's the cycle of fifths. Let's count through that. This is the first note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to the root. The other way you can do that is to go down a fifth and then come up a fourth. It's the same note. So start on B flat, go down to E flat, go up to A instead of going down to A, go down to D, up to G, down to C, up to F, and then to B flat. It's a lot easier certainly to play that than it is to go down a fifth each time. So one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to the root. And now where this becomes useful in jazz is you start to make chords out of those notes. So if we go through the scale by playing 7th chords in the key of the moment, which is B flat, we start with B flat major 7, C minor 7, D minor 7, E major 7, F 7, G minor 7, A minor 7 flat 5, or A half diminished 7th, back to B flat major. Now the most important notes of each of those chords is the 3rd and the 7th. The 3rd tells you what type of chord it is, which is major or minor, and then the 7th denotes whatever happens with that chord. For example, it's a flat 7 or a major 7. So then what I recommend to people is that you cycle through the fifths using the 3rd and the 7th and the root. So if we're starting on the root, that's B flat, the 3rd is D, and the 7th is A. Then what you do is you cycle through the fifths by changing one note. And typically the way it works is the 7th falls to become the 3rd of the next chord. So this note will fall to become the 3rd of E flat major 7. Then the 7th of E flat major 7 will fall to become the 3rd of A minor 7. And of course, we're not using the flat 5 in this case because that note would be here, which makes it an A minor 7 flat 5. We're only playing the 3rd and the 7th. Then the 7th of A minor 7 falls to become the 3rd of D minor 7. The 7th of D minor 7 falls to become the 3rd of G minor 7. 7th of G minor 7 falls to become the 3rd of C minor 7. 7th of C minor falls to become the 3rd of F7. And then the 7th of F7 falls to become the 3rd of B flat major 7. So let's go through that a little quicker. And of course, because you're moving in fifths, that's what all Western harmony is based on. These are basically a bunch of cadences in a row. And you can hear the resolution as you go through those. So this is what most jazz is based on. I'm going to put Autumn Leaves on your screen. What people may not realize is that this tune is based entirely on the cycle of fifths in the key of B flat. If you take a look at the first chord, it's 2 minor 7 instead of the root, but it still cycles through the diatonic cycle of fifths. Now there's one change here. Typically it would be D minor 7, but it goes to D7 instead because we're resolving to G minor. And then if it kept going, it would go back to C minor, B flat, E flat, A, D7 to G minor. I do want to point out why this D7 is here. We call that a secondary dominant. And the reason for that is because the primary dominant chord is F7 in the key of B flat. There's only one dominant chord per scale. If you add another dominant chord, in this case, we're changing D minor from the diatonic scale into D7. That's what's called a secondary dominant. It's an added dominant to the scale because we're going to G minor. And it fits the melody of Autumn Leaves. Because we're resolving to G minor. If we did D minor, it sounds almost the same, but it's not quite as powerful. Of course, you'd have to change this melody note to F natural to match a D minor chord, but it's not really the tune. So if you look at it, it cycles through the entire scale. This is chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you get back to C minor again, which is really cool if you think about it. It's a good idea to learn this cycle of fifths in a bunch of different keys. For example, in C major, it would be like this. Let's say we wanted to do a sharp key. Let's do the key of G major. Practice that. You've got the root in the left hand and the third and the seventh in the right hand. Remember, the seventh always falls to become the third of the next chord. So then what I always recommend is start adding extensions to the chords instead of just the third and the seventh. So instead of this, we're adding the ninth and the fifth. So that becomes a C minor 9 chord. It's a great chord voicing. Change one note to become F7. So the seventh falls to become the third of F7. And you got an F9 13 chord. And then what you do is you change the two middle notes to become B flat major 9, then change the two outer notes to become E flat major 9. Then we go to A minor 7 flat 5 or A half diminished seventh. You can play that chord like this or like this, which might be better. And then play a D7 flat 9 chord or sharp 9, and then back to G minor. So let's do that. And then I always recommend that when people start improvising, focus on the third and the seventh of the chords, specifically the third, because that's what denotes what type of chord it is, major or minor. Then let's go through Autumn Leaves, targeting the third of each chord. And of course, that doesn't really swing yet, but we could do that if we wanted to. In a minute, I'm going to put a link to download the lead sheet for Autumn Leaves so you can practice this using your cycle of fifths ideas. But for now, I'm going to hop over to the grand piano and let's see if we can make some music out of this entire cycle of fifths concept. All right, I hope you got something out of that. Let me post a link to the sheet music up here in the corner. It's also in the description below. And if you would be so kind as to give the video a thumbs up, it really helps us here at the channel. And if you'd like to subscribe, we'd love to have you. And if the cycle of fifths is a new concept to you, I might recommend that you go through our 10-part beginner course. It's called The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Jazz Piano. You can find the first video in that series right here.